Perfect. All right, let me share my screen. So we have, by the way, I hope everyone had a good weekend. I know some of you joined and I said that. And happy Monday. We're on day 4 of our sessions together. So 4 more to go. So just to recap, we have talked about getting your head in the game, your role as a manager, managing from the middle. And today we're going to talk about understanding yourself and others. So what we're going to cover today is to explore what motivates us, right? We need to know our drive, what drives us. Then we're going to talk about how to understand how to be an effective listener, and then determine what feedback is, why is it important, and when and how to give feedback. So we will be doing some practicing. Not everyone is comfortable with feedback, both for constructive criticism or areas of improvement, and also for giving compliments and praise. That's what feedback is for. It's not just a negative, right? So I am going to stop sharing real quick so I can see all of your faces. And I'm just going to ask you some questions, and I just wanted for you to drop it in the chat. The things that motivate me at work are. So what are some things that motivate you at work? Thank you, Paul. You can open your mic since we're kind of a small group, or you could just drop it in the chat. What are some things that motivate you? Yeah, money. There's nothing wrong with that. We got to pay bills. We want to go on vacation. What else motivates you? The mission. Okay. The team, recognition, working with people, the mission, doing work I love, good relationships. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you this question. What is one thing that will cause you to leave your job and go to a new employer? Mission no longer aligning with values, negative people, being micromanaged, feeling unincluded, bad intentions, feeling disrespected or undervalued. Oh my gosh, yes. I can relate to some of these, why I've left previous jobs. All right. So I'm gonna now share with you my screen, and I'm gonna show you a model. And this model was actually put together back in 1959, and it's still very relevant today. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Awesome. So this model was, this is the Hertzberg hygiene factors. So Frederick Hertzberg developed this model in 1959. He did this by interviewing over 200 professionals. The interviews really dug deep into what the interviewees were at their most and least happiest with their job. So he invited a group to reflect on the similarities and the difference of what they also said. So this was actually done in Pittsburgh in the US, and it actually talked to accountants and engineers. And what's really interesting is that you could see some of these factors, motivators, and hygiene factors are still very relevant to us today. So what he said was, he was able to identify motivators that seem to have potential to cause long-lasting satisfaction at work. And he called those motivating factors. And these motivating factors cause employees to work harder, to feel like they want to stay there, so there's some sense of loyalty, and they're found within the actual job itself. He also identified factors with potential to cause dissatisfaction if they were wrong or not there. And he called those hygiene factors. And hygiene factors are not present in the actual job itself, but it's the surrounding job. It's the team, it's the working conditions, it's the salary, it's the job security, right? And those were the differences. So what's interesting is that to increase motivation for you and your team, you have to ensure that hygiene factors are present and not causing dissatisfaction. So you need to know your team, and you also need to know yourself and what could or may impact your motivation as well, right? When will you stop wanting to be there? And the same thing happens for your team. So I want us to take a moment using the annotate tool. Remember, view, options, annotate, and then stamps. Use the annotate tool to indicate which factors are most important to you right now at work. If the annotate tool doesn't work, just put it in the chat and then I'll put it for you. Awesome. And this is really important. And I just also want to pinpoint our motivation factors can change depending where we are in our personal life and our professional life. You know, when we first start, a lot of it is money driven, right? That's why we're looking for the promotions. That's why sometimes we switch to other organizations. We got to earn more money sometimes to support ourselves or our families, whatever that situation may be. But there are times when it might change as well. We're looking more of that job security. We're looking more for that flexibility. We're looking at benefits, right? Especially if you're still going to school, maybe working for an organization that will pay for your master's or your continuing education is important. So our motivation factors change depending on what's going on with us and the experiences that we've had at work as well. So I can tell you personally right now, I am motivated by the teams and the relationships and the working conditions of my team and where I'm at. I obviously love the work, that's why I'm still in this field, but I'm more so excited about the relationships and growing in that aspect of my career right now. Was it like that a couple of years back? No. And that's okay, right? So you change and your motivation changes, and there's nothing wrong with that. So now I actually want us to get into groups. And I want you to discuss a time that you were motivated or unmotivated at work, and what role did your manager play in that situation? So Paul's going to put you in groups of about 2 or 3, or actually, hold on, let me stop sharing my screen and see how many of you are here. Okay, cool. Yes, we can put you of groups of 3 or 4. And then I just want you to just discuss that time in your career. And I'm going to put it in the chat. Discuss a time where you were motivated or unmotivated at work, and what role did your manager play at that time? We're going to have 7 minutes, and we're just going to get together and have that conversation. Everybody good? Awesome. Paul, let's work your magic, please.
Okay.
Reflection. Does anybody want to share what that situation was and what role did the manager play? Oh, you know I'm going to say this. Don't be shy. I'm going to share my story too, but I want to hear from you first.
Well, in the story I shared, it wasn't my direct manager, but the CEO of the company. So it was a demotivator. Last time, the last round of budget cuts.
Hold on one second. All right,
Echo?
sorry about that. Go ahead, Randy.
I was just going to say it was the last time the CEO ordered around the budget cuts. It was a demotivator.
Yeah, that's a very challenging time for an organization. Anytime there's change like that, when projects are ending, and we'll talk about going through change and how we should manage change as best as possible. But yeah, that's a definitely demotivator. And if there's no good communication, it will create a lot of instability, and a lot of people will leave before even decisions are made, and that's really hard. That's really hard. Cool. Anybody else? Okay, so I'll share my story. You know, I have some. So I was midway through my career. I wasn't already. I guess I was like in a management role, and I had just joined a small nonprofit organization that was in charge of distributing social service funds to the county that I lived in. So we were very small. Our executive director did not. He didn't manage people well. And the favoritism was very strong in the organization of 7, so it was very hard. But also the micromanagement was very challenging. So there was already loss of respect between the staff and the executive director. And I remember this had been building up. And I remember we were in a staff meeting, and I don't know what he said, but it triggered me. And I reacted very unprofessionally, which is not like me. So I got up and then I just walked out of the meeting, which was like a very aha moment for me, because that meant the feelings that I've had about maybe I need to start leaving and looking for another job, that all like catapulted right there. And I acted in a way that was not me, I didn't like, and it really hit home like, I need to start looking for another job. This is not the environment that I want to be in, because I'm acting in a way that's not me and unprofessional. So after I apologized, of course, I did start looking for another job, and within like 2 months, I left, and within 5 months, the organization closed. Yeah. So I say this because we also need to have those checks with ourselves if the environments that we're in are no longer healthy for us or not the best. And I say this not because it has to be a tumultuous environment, but also if there's lack of growth opportunities and you feel like you've reached your job and your potential, and there's nowhere else to grow. And I also say this because we need to help our staff identify those moments. We do have staff that have chips on their shoulder sometimes through whatever experience they've been through at the organization, and that are just unmotivated. And no matter what the organization does or what you do as a manager, they're just not happy. And this is not the right place for them. So having those conversations with them is also important, and we shouldn't shy away from that. Some people don't know when to leave a job. And they wait for life to happen or for someone else to take lead that conversation instead of them. So just let's be mindful of that, and let's not be afraid. I've had to tell people, usually about junior staff, when they've already maxed out their potential at the organization and there's no growth opportunities, but they're frustrated because they want to keep growing. And I'm like, this is just not that type of organization, unfortunately. So how can we help you find that next level for you? Right? And we should not shy away from that, because then they're upset, they're frustrated, and then it's just a cycle of unhappiness, and then starts affecting the team when someone's not in the right place for them. Okay. So each person examines their hygiene factors through their own lens and unique frame of reference. And because of this, it's important to work with each member of your team to understand their specific perspective. And you have to know yourself, and you have to self-check to see where you are and what is important to you, and where are you now in your life and your career. And you also need to know your team. So we need to be sure that we're being good listeners and that we're having those check-ins with our staff and having conversations with them to see where they're at. So those check-ins, those conversations, it's all tied to being a good listener. So in the chat, I want you to tell me why is listening hard sometimes? We all say, oh, we need to be good listeners, but why is it hard sometimes? So why do we have a hard time listening? You can open your mic or just drop it in the chat. Sometimes you're too focused on your own issues. Yeah, our own filter, right? When you want to jump in to add your ideas or fix a situation, when you start to hear what someone else is saying, yep, we go into that fixer mode and you have preconceived answers. It's also natural to go on a defense, yes, and our own thoughts and feelings. When I am stuck to my own perspective, and distractions pace of work. Yeah, we're just not there. We're not present, right? Either we're distracted with other things that we have to do, our own thoughts on the fixing mode. We're just not listening. I know it all and know it all attitude. Yeah, that fixer. So let's see what listening can sometimes be like. So I'm going to be very clear with my instructions. This is an opportunity for you to practice your listening right now, and for me giving instruction, right? So I am going to copy and paste the link on your chat, but do not open it. Okay, so I'm going to copy a link, do not open it. And so listening is hard because sometimes you may not be equipped to find solutions on challenges. Yeah, we just don't know, right? Okay, so I'm going to put this link on the chat. Do not open it. So we're testing our patience too, and self-control. All right, I need you to take a moment and go get a pen and a piece of paper. If you already have it, that's awesome. If not, go ahead and take a moment, go get a pen and a piece of paper or a pencil, anything that you can write with, and a paper. All right, everybody got it? Cool. You're going to be put in groups of 2. You're going to decide who will be person A and who's going to be person B. Person A is the only one that can open the link. So person B, do not open the link. Person A is going to describe the picture clearly without showing it to your partner. The goal is for you to describe the picture so that person B can draw it themselves. Okay. Person B, you're going to listen carefully and you're going to draw the picture as you hear it described. There are no questions. Let me say that one more time. There are no questions. Okay. You have 5 minutes. So that's not a lot of time. So there's not a lot of chit-chatting that could happen, but you're going to have 5 minutes to do this. Okay. If you end up in a group of 3, 2 people will draw and 1 person will give instructions. And at the end, everyone can show each other the drawing once you're finished. Okay. So are we clear? Awesome. So Paul's going to work his magic again. I'm going to put you in groups for 5 minutes. And Paul's putting the instructions on the chat. All right. See you all soon. How was it? Was it easy? Was it hard? Are you an amazing person giving directions? I see some like, nope. Who wants to share?
I will share on behalf of.
I gave instructions.
Oh, okay, hold on. Both. So we'll do Barbara Jean and then William. Go ahead.
So Cody is great at giving instructions. The only part where it got out of hand was when I went a little ahead of myself, thinking that I would know where he'd leave off. But he did start with the end already in mind, like, hey, so basically we're drawing a house. So I was just like, okay. So so this is my house. Thank you, Cody.
Oh, cool. That's pretty close to the picture. Okay.
Does it help that I'm an artist?
So Cody, have someone told you before that you're great at giving directions?
Not really,
Oh.
but it did get a bit challenging, like inside the house, like the windows and the door, and the stoop was hard. Like, I don't know, it was a lot of shapes, but like the placement of them was a bit challenging to describe.
So the details, right? Those
And I
little
think he
details.
kept saying, wait, let me think on how I want to describe this. So I was
Okay,
like, wow, he was very intentional about making sure that I understood.
that's cool. Okay, great. And then William?
Yeah, so I partnered with Judith, and I think I just gave the instructions. So I stand corrected. I'll pass it over to Judith to see if I gave instructions clearly.
What do you think? Do you think you gave instructions clearly?
I think I was yes, I think I did, to the best of my
Okay,
ability.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Judith. Oh, wait, Judith, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think he was, but I'm not an artist, so I think it's a figure that almost looks like what he said, but
Oh, okay.
I'm not an artist at all. Thanks.
No, that's perfect. Awesome. Did you have any challenges of when you were getting the instructions, how things were going to go, or were you just waiting for directions?
I was actually waiting for directions, but at one point after he had given me about 3 of them, I knew I had to release the paper I'd started drawing on and started drawing on another one because I had the other instructions still. So I drew about 2 papers before the final one.
Okay. Okay. We got to tweak before finalizing. Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
I'm
Who else
gonna
wants to
say
share?
Cody cheated because I didn't want to give away the house. So that's what Alexandria and I were like, I just went on shapes because I didn't think we were supposed to tell him what it was. So I was
Mhm.
doing abstract. So Alexandria has an abstract of what she thinks. it looks like.
Okay, wait, I want to see the drawing. Hold on.
Yeah, is everyone sitting down? Is everyone ready for an abstract interpretation of what turns out to be a house?
Okay, let's see. I'm excited. Oh, wow.
So again,
That
we
is
we didn't
awesome.
verbalize where we were going, and so at first I was like, "Oh, this is really hard to describe because it's a bunch of shapes overlapping with each other." Like, wow, like where did she even know where to start? And then when she described the rectangle with the little circle in the left, I was like, "Oh, this was supposed to be a house. I missed it. I totally missed the mark on this." But Dawn was very clear, but because I sort of misinterpreted at the beginning, and then obviously wasn't asking clarification questions, it was sort of like, the train had left the station at that point. So this is what we ended up with.
I love it. That's cool. I've seen different houses, but that one is great because it is abstract. I love it. I had never seen it like that. That's cool. All right, so we're gonna go to Randy and do Dawn.
Yeah, ours didn't turn out quite so well, but it's not bad.
So it's in between an abstract and not an abstract.
Yeah, it's in the middle. And so I gave the instructions.
And let's see your house.
Are you able to see
Yes,
how it looks like?
that's not bad. That was good. So you see
Yeah,
what? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, it is when you are interpreting what someone else is saying, but there is in other things in your mind. You go, there is a risk to go front of him without completing what he's saying. You go on and draw something different from the one describing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So how many of you thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be hard? Like, were already figuring out what this picture was going to be before you even opened the link? Yeah. It's our own, we sometimes get in our own way. of either listening or doing something, or either rushing, right? Or we're just not thinking of all the elements or the people that we're communicating with, which is really important. I always love this exercise because it's something so fun, but it also shows us a lot about ourselves, right? And so what's interesting in Cody's, from what Don and Cody's way of giving instructions, Cody started off with like, this is where we're going, right? The instructions didn't say you couldn't, right? So you can. So I'm also the philosophy of like, if someone doesn't say you can't, I can't. That's just me. But a lot of us are not. A lot of us are very prescriptive. We have to see it like you can't. I just like the opposite way because I'm like, why not? So those are things too that our personality starts playing into the role of how we communicate and how we lead. So super interesting. Anybody else want to share anything about this exercise? It's really fun. Highly recommend trying it with your teams. It will be an eye-opener and also helpful for you to see how they communicate, and have this just like a little debrief of how that was for them. But it's a great tool of any group you lead. You don't have to manage that team or supervise them, but it's very helpful. So the other thing that I want you to also realize from this exercise is that we cannot be expected to actively listen 100% of the time. It's hard. It really is. You know, times where active listening is especially important is during difficult conversations and coaching sessions. Okay. What people say is like an iceberg. What they say out loud is what we see above the surface. And let me show you the visual for this because it's very important for us to understand. Let me share my screen. No, I'm pressing the wrong button. So what people say is like an iceberg. What they say out loud is what we see above the surface, what I want. But we don't hear why they want it, what they mean, what their true motivations and interests are. Most conversations happen at the surface level. The I want. And if we really listen, we can sometimes start to get below the surface to understand more. And that helps us find out why someone wants what they want, what they act, how they act, and what their motivations are, and how we can find a convergence of interests, which is the key to finding a solution that meets both of our needs. Okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing for 1 second, and I'm gonna give you an example. And I love this example because it really does make you think about things a little bit differently and how folks approach you and how you approach them. So let's say there's a mother has 1 orange and 2 kids who are fighting over the orange. I need the orange. I want the orange, right? Above the surface. So what can the mom do? Just 3 options. She can cut the orange in half. She could just say, no one gets the orange. Stop fighting, right? And then, or just drop the orange in the middle and fight it out, right? Just go at it. Let's see who wins. But what about asking the kids? It turns out that 1 kid needs the orange rind to bake a cake. The other wants to drink the juice from the orange. So if the mom cuts the orange in half, no one gets enough of what they want, right? Because all she's hearing is, I want the orange, I want the orange. And if we're not careful, what you hear on the surface can trigger emotions because of unfiltered listening, right? Why can't they share? Why are they whining? Why are they crying? Yet what is under the surface are the motivations, the why. So when you try to understand why someone wants something, you can come to find some common ground so that you can start to find solutions or work better together, right? What is it that you want? So I like that example because sometimes we don't stop to think. Even in our own family members, they're like, I want this or I want that. And you're like, oh, why? Let me understand, right? So it's the same thing. And so now I'm going to go back Just sharing my screen real quick. And now we're gonna go over the steps of active listening. Oh, what happened here? Hey, what happened here? Okay, there we go. All right, so the first thing we need to do is unfiltered listening. That's listening without responding. So why this is hard, and exactly what we talked before, because we tend to spend time forming our own listening, like our own responses. We want to come up with solutions. We want to fix everything. I'm a culprit. I do that. I'm a fixer, right? So I really have to catch myself. We also empathize with people. So we're quickly to share our experiences instead of just letting them get it out. So how do we listen without a filter? So listening without responding, you have to be intentional. Stop putting your own filter, your own opinions, your own expectations, your own interpretation of what's happening or what happened. So dial back that noise in your head and be intentional. Say, I'm going to listen without layering my own experiences. I'm going to turn off the judgment. I'm going to turn off the preconceptions and practice that and be intentional. I sometimes, honestly, like, I just put my hand over my mouth like this, something, just because it reminds me to just like, let them get it all out, right? Especially when it's a very difficult situation where something happened and someone just needs to feel heard and seen. You just really need to actively control that, okay? So dial that noise back and then reflect, repeat back what you heard. You know, our natural response in a difficult conversation is to defend ourselves, not validate the other person's feelings, right? So this is a problem in a challenging conversation because you have to help the other person feel heard and seen. Doesn't mean you need to agree. That's different. But that you hear them, you understand, right? So reflecting forces you to listen without filters because you know you're going to have to repeat back what you're hearing and say, what I hear is, and state it like that. So you're not adding your own filter to it, right? So repeat the words back without adding any layers, any emotions, and repeat back the words and emotions that you hear. So what I hear is that you're upset about this, or it sounds like you feel angry about this. I understand. Doesn't mean you agree with the situation and the reactions, but you're understanding how the person feels and their interpretation of what happens. And when you do that, that de-escalates a very tough and uncomfortable situation. Okay? And then you inquire, you ask questions. So sometimes we assume that we know what happened and we really don't, right? So we need to take those layers out as well. So because we really don't know what happened. We don't know how people were feeling. We've all heard there's 3 sides to every story. Yeah, that's what it is. We can never really know what someone's experience is like until we ask them. So keep it simple, make open-ended questions. So help me understand why that's important to you. Or help me understand what happened that made you feel this way. Okay. Don't ask leading questions and say, oh, clearly this made you angry. No. Why did this make you upset? And then generate ideas. The final piece of active listening is to engage the person with the end goal of finding solutions or ways to move forward. And you can do this by generating ideas or next steps, depending what the situation is, okay? And that is how we get through this active listening. And it takes practice and it takes to be intentional. And we have to keep practicing. All right, so I have asked you to listen to me for quite a bit, and you're gonna get a chance to practice how to use your active listening skills while giving and receiving feedback. Okay, so we're gonna talk about that. So by a show of hands or emojis, how many of you think that you give enough feedback? Let me stop sharing so I could see you all. How many of you think you give enough feedback to your teams, to your family members? Not enough? Okay, that's fair. That happens. How many of you think you get enough feedback from your team, from your family members, from your supervisors? Okay. That's interesting. So now I'm going to ask you this, and you can open your mic or just drop it in the chat. What is feedback to you? So what is feedback?
I think feedback for me is more so learning about how my performance, also about where we're growing or going as an organization. I think sometimes things are going just so fast in the day-to-day that we find things out maybe after it's already cemented, or maybe I may share something after it's already been determined with my team. So it's just really keeping everyone in the loop and letting them know what's going on within their role or even within the organization in a timely manner.
Oh, I like that, in a timely manner. So it's the process of giving people information about the results of their actions or what the plan is for the organization. So what is the purpose? What are we trying to achieve with giving feedback?
I think there's two fronts to the purpose of giving feedback. One is to, I guess, to reinforce positive behavior for someone to continue, doing what they're doing at their best. And the other is to, sort of like change course on undesirable behavior.
Perfect.
Those two fronts.
Yeah, it's to help people see themselves as others see them, right? So to highlight the nature of their strengths, their nature of things that need more improvement, because we want them to learn from what they're doing. Great. So, for managers, feedback is very important part of maintaining and improving performance standards. So that's why we as managers need to make sure we always have that dialogue with our staff. And that's why it's important, because it's the potential to improve levels of motivation and performance of our staff and our teams. And if we avoid it or handle it badly, it can cost superficial conformity and then underlying rejection and resentment. So you get those passive aggressive staff members, right? That are very dissatisfied, don't feel seen, don't feel heard, don't feel included because we handled feedback incorrectly. So now I'm going to ask you this. Why is it difficult to give feedback? Why is it a challenge? Go ahead, Cody.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, especially if you're not in a position that you feel like your feedback was asked for, like if you're not a supervisor of that person, but yet you still have feedback for them or a situation, whatever, just feeling that like, is this the appropriate thing to do?
Okay, that makes sense. Anybody else want to add anything?
I would say for me, just to phrase it in like the simplest terms possible, I think I have this fear of hurting people's feelings. And so I might overthink how to deliver the message. I think ultimately, if the message goes through, it could help somebody improve. But I guess sometimes I might really hesitate because I'm worried it might like hurt this person as an individual. So that's something that I think I really need to improve on.
Yeah, we don't want to hurt people's feelings, or maybe it's not appropriate for us to give feedback, right? If we're not supervising the person. No, it's very valid, right? And, it's often difficult to also accept it without becoming defensive. So there's often a fear that we might result in an argument or someone getting upset. Also giving and receiving praise is often just as uncomfortable for people. And it is possible to learn to be better at giving feedback by remembering how to give feedback, right? And just keeping it simple. So feedback is successful when the receiver understands it, accepts it, and can act on it. So how do we do this? We have to make sure that the intention is to be helpful. We're not criticizing someone. We're not telling them a laundry list of things that they've done wrong this period of time. So it includes positive reinforcement of strengths. So like, hey, you've been doing amazing on this, areas of where we need to do improvement, and closing it out with next steps, or this is how we're gonna get you to that next level. So we sandwich it, okay? We don't start off with the negative. We start off what is working, where can we improve, and how we're gonna do this, or asking them what do they need from us. So then you're also concentrating on areas the receiver can control and do something about if possible, right? It has to be something simple and something that they have control over. It has to be specific. So you have to use examples if you can. And that's why being timely about feedback is also very important, because then you can draw from those experiences or that situation. And the feedback it describes, but it doesn't judge, right? You have to concentrate on the actions, on the behavior, without seeking to interpret intentions behind them. Okay. Also, not giving too much information overload, keeping it simple and to the point. When you're just like talking, we start thinking of the Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. Like it just goes nowhere after a while. And people just have a limit of how much they can take, right? So, and it has to be constructive. What are the next steps? How are we going to get to that next place? Or how is someone going to share the amazing work that they're doing? Maybe you want them to teach a class. Maybe you want them to do a lunch and learn, right? It doesn't always just have to be about changing a behavior, but it's how do we spread a good practice also with the rest of the team? And I can't stress this enough, being immediate, especially about bad or negative behavior, is key, right? Sometimes we need to recognize that we can't give feedback at that moment. Let's say there was a very explosive situation. Everyone just might need to pause for a second because emotions are high and just say, hey, let's talk about this in the afternoon, or we'll come back tomorrow and have a conversation. But you are addressing or acknowledging that something needs to be discussed about what happened. Okay. So feedback should not be stored up for annual reviews or for the end of a probationary period. A good practice is to have check-ins with your teams and discuss how things are going. What does your staff person need from you? What feedback do you have for them? It works both ways, okay? So by the time the performance reviews happen, no one is surprised. And now, especially with a remote or a hybrid work situation, you have found that, you have to do more check-ins with your staff. So have those debriefs, have those ongoing situations and conversations with them. Okay, it's very important. So I will share, I had keys thrown out at me during, we were actually, the person's performance evaluation turned into a firing. So when you are talking to folks that are, you just know they're very volatile, right? And it's going to be it could be a very uncomfortable situation. Don't give the feedback by yourself. Always have someone else from your team, someone else from HR. So there's a third party involved. So we were giving someone feedback that we were not going to extend them past the probationary period. And also a very high performing individual, but very unaware of their social interactions with the team. So back then the word toxic wasn't around, but what we would call today a very high performing, very toxic individual, right? And so we were just telling them, look, you do great work. We've had different conversations with you of how you need to speak to the donors or interact with staff, and it just doesn't seem to be working. It was actually their mid-evaluation that we did this. And they didn't understand because they thought they were amazing, even though we've had written conversations and things like that. So they were so upset. They were like, okay, well, we need you to hand in your office keys. That they got chucked through the whole side of the table. Oh yeah, it was interesting. But we knew this was going to be a very challenging conversation, so we had HR, a representative from HR there. And then we knew we had someone that would be able to escort the person out. We didn't think it would escalate to that level, but we were just prepared, and it wasn't fun. So when you are in a scenario where there is a very sensitive or conversation, or there's a person that is very explosive, or you just don't know how they're going to react, have a third party there. It could be your supervisor, or it could be a member from your human resources team. Okay, you always want a third party there. All right, so I'm going to show you, before we get to practice on giving and receiving feedback, I'm going to show you a model, and they call it the onion model, right? So slice everyone through the center. And like an onion, we have many, many layers. And at the very center is our personality, which is very change resistant. Next come our attitudes. It's made up of all our formative influences, our experiences, what shapes us, right? And that is very change resistant as well, but less so than your personality. And then comes the behaviors. That's like the wardrobe, right? The way we behave at work could be different than the way we behave with family, with friends, in a social gathering, a professional setting. So we change our behaviors like we change our wardrobes. So this is the most open to change and feedback layer of all of us. So, and consider aligning behavioral feedback to organizational values and behavioral competencies, because then they won't feel attacked. You're not attacking my personality, who I am on my core. You're just acknowledging or redirecting me on a behavior. And we also have to know when we've tried everything and someone's not going to change their behavior, and where we might need to have performance improvement plans or have different conversations about them. Okay. So the SBI model is the situational. This is the Center for Creative Leadership created this SBI model to find out the intention behind the action someone took, instead of us thinking we know why someone acted in a certain way. So a very simple model. Some of us probably already use this, but now we know there's a model. And you clarify the situation, describe the specific behavior observed, and explain the impact their behavior had. Okay. So I had a staff member that was helping folks with their travel reimbursements, and there was lack of cooperation, but a lot of complaining from staff. So during the staff meeting, my staff person decided to blow up and complain in front of our executive director about everyone not doing their share. So then I had to debrief with them after. And the situation was that during the staff meeting, they were very unprofessional in the way they addressed the rest of the team about their travel reimbursements, right? That's the situation. And the behavior, or the impact rather, is that it was an inappropriate way to speak to others during an all staff meeting. It's just unacceptable. So then I asked them, tell me what was going on that made you react that way or act that way. So what is your intent? And then they explain the level of frustration, right? So this model for coaching on performance is great because it's very specific and very to the point. And it's also great to use it to give feedback. I observed this situation. You did amazing. You handled, the donor conversations great during this emergency. This is what happened. We were able to extend the project. Thank you so much. So it's the same way you can use it for positive reinforcement. All right, so we are going to get into groups and we are going to practice giving feedback. All right, we're going to have groups of 4. So first, you're going to have we can have about 20 minutes. Person 1 will be the person giving the feedback, and we'll choose from the 2 scenarios that we're going to share with you. And you will give, then person 2 puts themselves in the individual shoes getting the feedback and then respond based on that. And then person 3 and 4 will be the observers and then give feedback to the interaction. And we should rotate, if you can, 3 times, but at least 2 times. Okay, so at least everyone or most everyone will have a chance to change roles. Okay, so person 1 will choose from the scenarios and will be the person giving the feedback. Person 2 will be receiving the feedback and responding based on that. And persons 3 and 4 will be giving feedback to the whole interaction. Okay, so the scenarios are as follows. Your boss is not giving you definitive answers or the timeline for your deliverables, and it's making it difficult to move forward with your project. So this is about managing up. The second scenario is a staff member who reports to you is increasingly demonstrating lack of motivation and a slight attitude problem. So this is focusing on managing staff members. So these are the two scenarios you will get to choose from. And we are going to have, actually, because of the time, I want you to come back and not take you over. We're going to have about 17 minutes. So we have enough time to debrief after. Okay. And then Paul is going to work his magic. All right, we will see you soon. So how do you regroup? Thanks, Paul. Sorry about that. So how do you regroup from those situations? So how did it go, Don or Randy?
So I kept trying to ask questions, and because part of what Randy brought up was the past, how he did not feel heard or included, I couldn't go back, right? So I tried moving us forward in the conversations and what can we do now with the project that we have and not try to rehash history because it's done, right? So
She did well.
Yeah, there was also I think you exchanged some benefits. You you agreed to be more inclusive, and then he agreed to be part of the project going forward, to lead the project. So there was an exchange of something.
Yeah. She mentioned being willing to listen to me more in the future. And said I could have my Xbox back in the break room too. So that was what did it for me.
it was the last minute bribe that I could get him. No kidding.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's interesting. Because sometimes as managers, we also have to recognize our role in the situation, right? And what could we have done more of or differently? Sometimes nothing, and that's okay. It's not like it's our fault, right? But sometimes it's like we need to have that check-in with ourselves if we've done everything in our power to make sure our staff succeed. And if we have, great. If we haven't, then that's where we need to be like, what can we tweak differently? And if we have, but just the staff is not doing what they're supposed to, that's where that line is, right? Where do we just need to say, okay, it's a performance issue. Have a performance improvement plan or separation, right? If someone's not happy, we can't keep them there because it becomes this passive aggressiveness, also trickling down to the entire team. And then you have a team that's on a downward spiral. So having those conversations too, it's important. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share? The other group? I see a mic. I hear a mic. Can't see it. Okay.
I think our team deserved the Oscar, by the way. And I think it really had me thinking, how do I want to, because the situations are so realistic and you can find yourself in the day-to-day of having to either be the boss or be the person having to report to a boss and, deal with this conflict. It just made me think like, man, okay, how do I want to respond or how do I want to be approached even in this situation?
And then you also see the importance of not waiting till everything gets bottled up, right? So everybody is either surprised or has an explosion about all the things that have been not working out. It's not productive at that point, right? Because then you're just venting. It's all emotions and nothing constructive coming out of it. So that's why I'm going to share my screen real quick. That's why, giving the right feedback is important. So try to make a positive experience. Be timely about it, especially if you're correcting a behavior. Make it regular. Prepare. There's a lot of times that we have staff that derail the conversation. Have your bullet points so we can bring it back, right? Talk about positives. Remember that sandwich we were talking about, positive areas of improvement. How do we move forward? Use I statements, not you. You don't need to be, this is what it looks like. And then follow up, send a follow-up email on the conversation. Or sometimes we have to have staff sign on the evaluations. Okay. So, also as we're receiving feedback, because part of us giving feedback is also getting feedback as managers. So stop your initial reaction, take a deep breath. Also know your limits. Sometimes staff or even us just are venting and ranting on with nothing constructive. Know when it's enough and we need to pause that conversation and revisit it at a later time. And there's nothing wrong with that. Summarize what you've heard, reflect on it, and then what are the next steps? Right? So giving and receiving feedback is good because it helps us clarify expectations and responsibilities, as well as building a good rapport so that we can have better, honest and open conversations as a team, as individuals, and at the end of the day, do a better job serving the communities and working with the teams that we're working with. That's the end result. We all want the same things. It's all these little things of how do we get there that really sometimes stomp us. All right, I know we're 2 minutes over, but I want you to have a little, if you could drop in the chat. I know we covered a lot. I mean, we're covering a lot, but what is one thing I learned? You can drop that in the chat. That'll be lovely. And then we will be wrapping it up for today and coming back together tomorrow. So what is one thing you've learned today? To be direct and get down to the motivations and intentions. Yeah. Go below that surface. Timely feedback is essential. Yes. Be intentional about making sure. Learning how to give feedback. Yes, practice, practice, practice. Prepare, have your bullets, know what you want to say. So be intentional about making sure you're understood. Okay, feedback should be both ways. Yes, ask why or understand motivation in order to solve problem. Originality. Awesome. Yeah, remember, it's both ways. We're going to give feedback, but we have to also know what our role was in that situation. All right. Awesome. Thank you all so much. I know we're 3 minutes over. I appreciate your time. And we will see you all tomorrow to talk about working with people. All right. Have a good day. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
See you
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.